Hello, and welcome to the Female Founder Friday podcast with me, Lindsay White. I'm passionate about helping female entrepreneurs be great leaders, build high-performing teams, and create inspiring workplace cultures through innovative talents, programs, and practices. Because when people feel like they belong at work, they deliver their very best and businesses thrive. And the Female Founder Friday podcast is all about connecting with the most incredible female entrepreneurs to talk about their journey to creating their own business, the mistakes they've made along the way, and how they view their own leadership. And I'm challenging all of my guests this season to take my leadership style quiz, and during each episode, we'll be digging into their leadership style and how it impacts the way they lead in their life and their business. If you're interested in learning more about your leadership style and want some of my top tips to help you lead more effectively, you can take the quiz right now. Just check out the show notes or head over to highvoltageleadership.ca, click on the button at the top of the page that says take the quiz, and then you can share your results, connect with our guests, and join the conversation on Instagram by following me at highvoltleadership. My guest this week is Sara Chambers, and Sara's the founder of 𝐂𝐤𝐤𝐬 Creative, and she's had such an incredible journey to becoming a female founder. She worked for many years in the nonprofit and the arts and culture sectors, but when she was let go from her last role, she realized she just was not gonna hustle for her self-worth anymore, and she started her own agency. And now she plays by her own rules and attracts great clients instead of chasing her value. I'm looking forward to sharing this conversation with you today. Awesome. Welcome, Sara, to the Female Founder Friday podcast. It is a real pleasure to have you here today. How are you?
Oh, Lindsay, thank you so much for having me. I'm well, thank you.
Awesome. Well, it's been a while since we've been in touch, so I'm really glad we could make this happen. And I'm excited to learn more about your journey to being a female founder, because I know it's been a really colorful and exciting path for you.
It has been. I feel like I don't know anybody that exists kind of in the crux or I wouldn't want to position myself as being at the catalyst or the top of my leadership journey, but I just don't know anybody who claims that position who hasn't had some sort of rise to that. And it's a little bit more like a roller coaster than a
Yes.
linear path for sure.
Yes, it is. Totally is. Awesome. Well, tell us, how did you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I'm one of the few people in the world who actually ended up doing something for their career that they went to school for. I feel like that's a little
Yes.
few and far between sometimes. But I went to school for journalism and mass communications with an emphasis in public relations. And my minor was in theater performance. And so I, of course, as a brand new, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed college graduate, thought that I would work in theater and arts marketing and public relations. And I graduated, unfortunately, in 2008. And that is not a great time for wanting to enter any job market, and then much less hoping to work in nonprofit, and then even less than that, hoping to work in the arts nonprofit.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting start to my career, but I obviously just worked kind of outside of my industry for a while. But on the side, I worked really hard to gain the experience that I knew that I could leverage later on. And so I volunteered as the marketing director for a local Shakespeare company, theater company here in Arizona. And from there, I believe that it was that experience that helped me leverage kind of the building blocks of what would come. And so I eventually made my way to working at a regional theater, and I loved working in the arts. But of course, especially in that time, a lot of the public relations jobs and marketing jobs were being kind of combined. There wasn't a lot of compartmentalization for those roles and specialties. And so I I mean, it was difficult, but I feel like it really served me well because I got my hands dirty with a lot of different types of marketing and communications right on the job and in my career. And so I spent the greater part of my career working in nonprofits and lifestyle companies, in every part of marketing communications, from photography to social media to email marketing to public relations and kind of everything in between. And I found myself working as the senior copywriter of a large global humanitarian organization. And it was really beautiful and fulfilling work. And then, of course, like most creatives do, I had always moonlighted and had clients and freelance projects kind of on the side. And I got let go from that job. And I feel like it's a little bit of a cliche story sometimes, but they let me go and they eliminated my position. And I very distinctly remember sitting in that moment and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. I am not going to sit across the table from someone and attempt to present myself in a way that makes me the most desirable candidate. And I just felt like the dynamic, the power dynamic in that was not something that was attractive to me anymore. And I feel like in that moment, I lost all motivation to participate in that. And I so began my entrepreneurial journey. So I started and founded my own agency. Probably right there in the parking lot of that company. And so set off to really establish myself and to kind of play by my own rules. I wanted people to work with me because they felt like I was the best fit and that I was the one that was attracting instead of chasing. And I haven't looked back since.
I love what you just said there, in attracting instead of chasing. And isn't that a truly powerful shift in terms of how you view what you bring to the world? And I'm talking in our business, in our career, in our relationships. Attracting versus chasing. I love it. I love that.
Yeah, that's actually one of my regular affirmations, is that everything that is for me will find me and I attract, I do not chase. And I really want to exist in that dynamic where I get to maintain the power of my own work and my own contributions. And I get to decide how I'm going to show up and who I'm going to serve. And I get to decide what boundaries to hold and where to make exceptions. And I just think that there's a lot of autonomy in being an entrepreneur. And that is probably the most attractive part to me.
Can I get an amen? That is exactly it. I think, I talk to women on this show. I work with female entrepreneurs and small business owners every day. And isn't that exactly what it is? No matter how we come to this place where we become, I would argue, almost unemployable, right? Like, we're awfully damn picky.
Real picky.
But for whatever reason, and everybody, this is what I love about this podcast. Everybody has a different journey. Everybody has a different story, but everybody kind of comes to that moment where they're like, this just isn't working for me anymore. Whatever they were doing just no longer serves. They're just no longer willing to tolerate. They're just no longer willing to put up with the shit and abuse and the stuff and the garbage and the drive and the commute and all of it. And they're like, okay, so now it's all about me. So I guess I better go, do my thing.
Yeah. And,
right.
And just to piggyback off of that, like, I think, of course, definitely don't want to get too in the weeds, but there's always moments in corporate culture where you see things and you are unfortunately in a position where you have to kind of deal with the culture that someone else has setting,
Yeah.
and you have to deal with the consequences of someone else's choices. And I wanted to put myself in a position where I said, I'm not claiming perfection, and I know that I'm going to make mistakes, but I want to be held accountable for the mistakes that I'm making, and I want to be celebrated for the successes that I'm creating. And again, I think it does kind of come back to that autonomy and that having the position of being able to make what decisions make the most sense for me. But I wanted to be removed from the culture where decisions were being made and you have the experience and the foresight to be able to look down the road and say, I can see what is going to come from that. And yet you don't have any authority to make a different decision.
Yeah.
And you know that you still have to bear the consequences of that decision down the road. And I don't want to play that game anymore. I want to embrace the fact that I have that capacity and that ability to see. And I want that to craft something different and something better. And I definitely want to play a part in making that come to fruition.
Yeah. No, you know what? I really love that. And because you're right, I think that's exactly it. We have to adapt to, business strategy, business culture that is not, it's not ours. And the larger the corporation, the less we have to influence. And I think that's why it is so important to me, not only that I work with female entrepreneurs so they are great leaders, they feel really confident in their leadership from the inside out, but also the importance of creating a culture in their organization as they start to hire team, as they start to build culture, that they create what they want it to be, that it is based in the values that are important to them, that it is based on a vision that they can share and enroll other people in, right? And that we really maintain the energy and the dignity of that, because it's easy to get away from it as our businesses grow, as we add more people. Really being clear on what that is and really making sure that is a centerpiece of how you grow your organization is important, because otherwise we're just as bad as the big guys, right?
Yeah, it's true. I think it takes an extreme amount of self-awareness and self-evaluation to be able to kind of sit in that space and not just want something better, like you said, for yourself, but also for the people who might come along and join you in this journey. Like, I think about that very often, and I put a lot of intention behind the decisions that I make every day.
Yeah, I love that word, intention. And I think that is really key, is really being very thoughtful and very intentional about everything that you do in your business, including how you show up. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So now, great journey. So interesting. Totally love it. I am sure somewhere along the way you have screwed it up, messed it up, fucked it up. What was that all about? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah, it's obviously difficult to pin down one because there are many.
I know.
I would say some of the biggest learnings or mistakes kind of early on in my journey was around setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I am a client service-based provider, and when you're just getting started, it seems again like you are really trying to find the people to work with, and you're really trying to find those clients, and you're trying to find the next job that it's going to fulfill your business. And in that, I think that we start to make some sacrifices, or we start to think about, well, this doesn't feel quite right, and there's a red flag there, but I don't have any other prospects kind of lined up. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And I have learned so much about, one, understanding our own process and who is a good fit for that process and who is going to rub raw and rub up against that process in a way that isn't fun for anybody. And so really understanding not just who is a good fit for our business in terms of ideal client in the way that we do when we help our clients establish that for their own businesses, but also when you get to know your own process for working so well that you just know certain types of people with certain types of maybe personalities or
Yeah.
worldviews, or certain things are just not going to rub up well against your process. And so recognizing those things and being willing to say no. I'll share a story that I think is
Yeah.
really, really powerful. We had a potential client that was talking to us about branding, and it was a very substantial project. And we had gone back and forth several times and offered several variations of our proposal. And some of the things that the client had said really just didn't sit well
Mm.
with me, and gave me some serious red flags. And then kind of when the last one came through, I turned away the project and I rescinded my proposal. And I said, after this, and this, I don't feel like we're a good fit for your project. And I don't feel like no matter how hard we work or how successful we are at the project, that you're going to be happy at the end result. And that is directly affecting our reputation. And I
Yeah.
don't even want to venture on this project if that's going to be the result, because no one's going to be happy, and that's
No,
miserable.
no. And you know what? I think that that is so key, is recognizing that it's not going to be successful on several different levels. But most importantly, it's just not going to be a successful end result. The outcome is not going to be what everybody wants it to be. It's going to be stressful on relationships, right? It's going to, compromise brand, whether it's their brand or your brand or both. Like, I actually think that's a really key point. Like, if it's not a fit, it's going to be not a fit in a couple different ways, probably not just one.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's a little bit more to that story, which I think is what really makes it interesting, kind of
Yeah.
flips it on his head. Is that particular client said okay and went off and hired another branding agency, spent about $8,000 to get started in this other company, and was severely unhappy with
Oh,
the result of the
yeah.
work, and came back and said, what is it that we need to do in order to work with you? And from that point, is that dynamic and that power shift that I spoke about
Yeah.
earlier. Is there was such a shift in being able to say, one, you had to pay a painful and expensive lesson, and
Yes.
I'm sorry for you,
Yeah.
but also this is how we do things.
Yeah.
This is the standard and how we operate. This
Yeah.
is the quality by which we provide. And this is the expectation of you as the client.
Yeah.
And we are the expert. This is what's expected of you. And these are the parameters. And you have to exist within those parameters if you want to work with us. And that client said, okay, we'll do whatever it is that you say. And from there on was just a super successful project. But I think that he had a particular type of personality, and I needed to in some way show him that I
Oh,
wasn't going to be bulldozered.
yeah.
And the second that I claimed back my power, and that I claimed my authority in the project, and I established this is who we are, and we're the expert, and you're going to play by our rules, that he just kind of fell in line. And I think that he got a level of respect for me and my
Yeah.
company and my process that he didn't have before. And it was a super successful project, but it took me being willing to walk away from a $35,000
Yeah.
project, because it was going to be miserable for
Mhm.
everyone, for him to kind of reaffirm and recognize that we were actually the best fit, and that he was willing to kind of not take a back seat, because our process is very collaborative, but that he was willing to recognize our expertise, that he was willing to um, run the project within our scope and within our parameters of how we
Yeah.
work.
You know, I mean, I think you make a couple really important points here. And the first piece is really having the confidence and the presence to say, This is how we do our best work. And we have expertise here. We have a proven system or process, whatever that looks like, and different businesses have different things. But we have a proven formula for success. And if that formula doesn't work for you, client, there really is no amount of money that is going to make that different, because we're focused on creating the very best outcome, the very best result. And we know that that result comes through this framework. Right?
Exactly. And that learning, honestly, I wish that learning came to me intuitively,
No,
but
I
it
get it.
didn't. It came from making the other choice a couple too many times
Yeah.
and working with a client where I didn't hold that boundary and I didn't say no and I didn't operate within my own
Yeah.
power and my own expertise. And I feel like that's kind of how, I don't know, that's how I learn. I learned the hard way sometimes,
Oh,
and I had to
100%.
take a nosedive to the pavement a few times before the next time that red flag popped up, I went, ooh, yeah, I don't want to do that one again. Because this is beginning. You start to see the patterns and you start to recognize
Yeah.
what those look like in
Yeah.
the early iterations. And that's when your intuition, your experience, your expertise really starts to come into play. Is you're like, I've been there, I've been down that road more than once, and I don't really want to do that again. And like
Yeah.
you said, there's no amount of money that will make it worth it, because that is such a miserable experience for everyone involved, and it does not bear well for my reputation.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. And that's exactly it. You don't produce that high quality result. You don't have a great connection. You don't collaborate effectively. And I think that that's really key. Now that, I mean, that is not to say, and I'm sure there are, you mentioned earlier, places where you can be flexible, you can be open. It's a very collaborative process for you. I mean, I've spent enough time with you to know that that's true. But that there are some pieces that really do require that close attention, and that, just have to be done in order to make something that everybody can really be pleased with and proud of.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I'm sure this is true in many industries, but especially in branding, I really tell my clients from the beginning, you're not hiring us to get what you want.
Yeah.
You are hiring us to get what you need. And I promise you that at the end of this, you will be much happier with the result, because, and it will actually like start to fuse between what it is that you want and what becomes, excuse
Yeah.
me, what you need actually becomes what you wanted.
Yes.
Because if you want someone to just execute kind of the sketch or the vision of your brand in your mind, then you really should just hire a graphic designer to
Yeah.
go ahead
Yeah.
and execute that for you. But we are a branding firm, and we operate from a place of strategy and
Yeah.
intention, but also authenticity. And
Yeah.
so you're gonna get a far better, more expert result on the other end, because you decided to trust our expertise and you're
Yeah.
coming to us because of that.
Yeah. 100%. You know what? I totally get that, right? Like, why go to, why go to an expert and then try and tell them what to do? Like, that, like, truthfully, in like, at the heart of it, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And you're right. I mean, so many of us, we live to serve, right? We're really excited about what we do. We really love to help others, and we really want to help everybody. The truth is, we can't help everyone, because not everybody wants to be helped the way we can help them. The second part is, not everybody, to your point, not everybody needs what we got, and that's okay. That is okay. And when we come to that place where we start to put those things together, you're right. We get our power back, and then we can say, you don't want what I have. You don't need it. You're not interested in the expertise. And that's okay. Go find somebody else to help you. Maybe there's a better fit. That's super cool.
Yeah, we like to tell our clients, something I talk about often is that your brand, obviously speaking from kind of a brand strategy perspective now, should bring you either time or money. And if someone is just the perfect fit for you, they view you as the expert, they are falling in line with the type of client they serve, they have a problem that aligns with the solution that you offer, they're going to bring you money.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then they're going to bring you time, because they're never going to fill out the form on your website. They are never going to reach out to you. They're not going to bother scheduling a discovery call with you. So your brand should be in some ways a little polarizing in that it should either attract, or like we said earlier, attract or repel people, in that it's bringing you either time or money.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think, I think that's true in a lot of spaces, because I can think about the work that I do with, small businesses, and really thinking about the kind of talent they want to bring to their business. And there's a lot of connection there, right? Being really clear about who is going to fit in your business, not just the skills and experience and education they have, but the values, the behaviors, the competencies, the attitude. All of those things are really important in determining fit. And you're right. Like you've got to be a little polarizing about that. You've got to put a stake in the sand, don't you? So that people can almost self-select. Okay, well, I don't have that value, or that doesn't work for me, or I don't like working that way. So I guess that's not a place I'd like to work, right? Or it's not a brand that I'm attracted to. So there's a lot of connection there between the brand you have for the business and the way you sort of brand and attract talent to work for you. So that's interesting.
It's so true. Actually, we talk a lot about how branding is not just an effective and completely crucial tool in your external communications, but also your internal. Yeah. So when you have an established brand that, like you said, really aligns with values, people are looking to work for companies that they feel good about. Yeah. There's just so many opportunities and options right now, and more than there has ever been. And people are going to spend so much of their life in service of your business and your offer. And if they don't feel like that is in alignment with them, then you're not going to get the best talent.
Nope.
And so branding really not only becomes a sales tool, but also a recruitment tool in that way.
And in that way, it's got to be really authentic, because people will sniff it out.
Oh, they see through it so fast. Yep. And especially now, I really think that one of the worst sins that you can create as a business is hypocrisy, because there's so much transparency right now. There's so much ability for people to be able to find and discover truth. And there's not a lot of things being hidden behind, big doors in corporate spaces even anymore. And so you have to show up to be who you say you are. And honestly, if you're not that, then just don't say that you are.
Just be clear about it.
Just be real clear about it. We talk about that with our clients all the time, especially when it comes to their social, and when they're posting in celebration of particular I don't know, like days of celebration or observances and things like that. So if you are talking about celebrating Black History Month, then you need to take a really good hard look and see who is in your leadership team and what kind of not just diversity, but equity and inclusion that you have implemented into your business. And that's just one small example.
I remember on Women's Day this past spring, there was a Twitter account. So all of these big organizations are tweeting about Women's Day 2022 and equality for women. And this Twitter account was calling them out. So they would retweet and say, and this company pays its women 30% less than its men overall. And this company doesn't have any senior executives that are female. And this company doesn't support blah, blah. Oh, I laughed. But if you were in the communications and marketing department at a big organization and you had a big issue like that and it hit Twitter like that, I mean, they got called on the carpet. And I thought, that is exactly it. Don't you go and celebrate women, and then we find out that you pay them 40% less on average, or that you don't support, diversity. And no, don't do it. Don't do it. You will get caught. And the end result is you will lose customers, and you will lose the ability to hire top talent, because those really great females and the allies will say, I'm not working for a company that pays women 40% less. I'm not working for a company that doesn't have any senior female executives. I'm not working for a company that doesn't support women's reproductive rights. Like, I'm not doing it. I won't work there. Doesn't align with my values.
And the thing that's really interesting to me is that there's a lot of people that will make that very intentional and conscious decision to say, I'm not working there. No. But there are so many people that might not even notice, but their trust in that company has eroded. And trust in brands happens dynamic, like in a really organic way, the same way that it happens with humans, is that it takes a moment to just erode your trust, and it takes years to build it back, because you have to have very positive, trustworthy experiences consistently over time to build back eroded trust. 100%. People are happy to provide you their trust pretty right off the bat, most people are. The second that trust is eroded and is diminished, it takes a substantial amount of effort to build that trust back, and you have to be willing to put in the work. And so everything you said is just spot on, but I think that there's also kind of that long-term detriment of trust in a brand that you might not recognize right off the bat. It might not be as apparent, but when people stop trusting you as a company, it takes a lot longer to rebuild that trust.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. Well said. All right. Then in the next part of our conversation here, I'm going to ask Sara about her leadership style, because she's taken my leadership style quiz. And if you are interested in learning more about your own personal leadership style, you want to follow along, you can find the link to that quiz in the show notes or on the website, highvoltageleadership.ca. It's really quick. It's really fun. You might learn something about yourself. I've got some great tips for you to make you a better leader. But let's find out, Sara, I think you said to me that you are a coaching style of leader, maybe with a little director layered in there. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that lends itself well to not only the type of leader that I am, but also the type of work that I do in the branding space. I don't think that I ever set out or thinking that I would be a coach, but so much of the branding process is not about me telling you who you are or deciding that from a place of strategy or coming to any conclusions on my own, but rather just helping you discover who that is. And that's really what our branding process is about, is asking the right questions and prompting people in the right way to help them to arrive at those conclusions, because you know who you are innately inside of you, and you don't have to be told, but sometimes you just really need someone to be that guide, to walk you along that path, to help you to discover that. And I feel like that's what we do for our clients, but that's also what I feel has kind of leaked over into leadership and my team. Is it's not my job to tell you who you are, but really just to help you discover what that looks like and how I can help support that and put you in the right place and resource you in the best possible way. So I don't know that coaching would be something that I thought that I would fall into in both leadership and in the way that we serve our clients, but it clearly has come about.
I love that. And I think, as someone who is a coach and does that on the regular, just using that style of approach, right? Really asking beautiful open-ended questions, and then just continuing to pull on those golden threads that people come with, whether it's talking about their business and their brand, or it's talking about what they value, what their purpose is, how they want to be a leader, how they want to build their life and their business. Like, it's just continuing to pull on those threads. It's continuing to show people how big and beautiful and bold they can be, and just getting them to embrace that, and helping them step into that. Because sometimes I think people, you said guide, I think they need a little bit of guidance to see what's possible, to envision what they could be or how they could show up or what their business could look like. Like that's sort of that coach-like approach that I think just draws more out of people, Sara.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not a therapist by any means.
Oh.
It is not my profession or expertise, but I have been told many times that the branding process feels a lot like therapy, because all we're really doing is helping, like you said, helping people discover who they are and how they want to show up in the world. And what that acts like is a big fat permission slip to be your authentic self. And that if you don't have to manipulate yourself into some box to be palatable for someone else in order to be successful, and that you can and should be both. And that in fact, if you are yourself, then you are your authentic self showing up, then you will be more attractive and more successful. And I think that so many people just have never had the opportunity to understand that about themselves. And it's an honor for me to hand them that permission slip, sometimes for the very first time in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, really resonate with that. Because you're right. It really is giving them the right space, the right language, the right approach. You know, I mean, permission slip is sort of the perfect way to put it. It's just giving them the opportunity to really step into what makes them beautiful and special and magical, and really embrace that and be bold with it, right? Like you talked earlier in this episode about really, being in your own power. And yeah, we do tend to play pretty small. We get involved in a lot of shoulds. There's a lot of pressures that come into play with all of these things that we should be doing. And when you have someone who enables you to put that stuff down, man, it can be really, really impactful.
Yeah. And I think that kind of like we talked about, like attract or repel earlier, I think that there is an incredible amount of power when you understand and almost expect that there are going to be people that won't understand you and that aren't going to connect with you. And that's okay. And that our job here is not to be for everybody.
Nope.
And I actually really appreciate the people who are not for me, because it reminds me that there are plenty of other people who are. And I really have the capacity, in the same way that every one of your listeners and of course all of our clients do, is when I am able to confidently and boldly show up exactly as I am, my message will resonate with people in a completely different way than it would someone else. So Lindsay, you can say the same message and even the same medium as I can, and there will be people who do not connect with me at all, don't get what I'm saying, it doesn't emotionally resonate with them. And then they can hear the exact same message, even in the exact same medium, but the messenger is different. It's you, because the way that you say something and the experience and the story that you bring to it, it's going to hit certain people differently, and it's going to click for them in some way. And so I feel like when people don't show up in their truth and their authenticity and exactly as they are, they're actually doing all of those people a complete disservice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's so many synergies here, because I think what you said certainly applies to the branding and to the business. But man, from my perspective as a leadership coach, like ditto, when we show up authentically and when we understand what is really our own superpowers as a leader, what we do really well, and also acknowledge that we got things to work on, right? When none of us are perfect, it's a journey. But when we do that and we can really embrace that, yeah, we're not probably for everybody as a leader. Not everybody is gonna pick up what we're putting down. But that when we really embrace who we are and we use all of our best self to lead in our business, yeah, like magical things happen. When we use our best self in our branding, yeah, magical things happen. Like, I just love that there is so much overlap here. It's so fun to look at this from these different perspectives and see so much that's the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like branding is really powerful work. And when you have that tool and that resource in your life and your business, not just from like a corporate brand, but also from like a personal brand perspective, it doesn't matter what anyone else says anymore, because you are standing in your own truth and your own power, and you know who you serve, and you're just so well resourced with everything you need to confidently step forward. And so people that have gone through that process are just unstoppable.
I love that. Well, that is such a great place to land the conversation today, Sara. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. What a wonderful, inspirational conversation this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. And if you did enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor? Would you give the episode a 5-star review and share it with all of your friends? I would really appreciate that. I've got a goal to impact 1,000 female founders, and with your help, we can really amplify this message. Thanks again for being a part of the show, and don't forget to connect with me and all of my guests on Instagram at High Volt Leadership. We'll see you next Friday.